Which Side Podcast is a proud member of the Which Side Media Collective.
This week's episode is brought to you by the Certain Days Freedom for Political Prisoners calendar. We got a bunch of them, and we're giving them out with every order over $15. We only have a limited supply, so get them in quick while supplies last.
Yeah, we just love the calendars, love what they're doing, so we went out and bought a bunch of them to give out to you. So, every order of $15 or more, we're going to give you a free calendar. So go get your orders in, get a free calendar. Only while supplies last. They're going pretty quickly. So, if you don't get one, definitely go to certaindays.org and get one yourself either directly or you can get them at pretty much almost any distro that's out there. InfoShop that, has them. AK Press has them. But you can go directly to them. So go to certaindays.org. So get your orders in now at whichsidecollective.org. And then, go support them directly if we run out. This is episode 209.
Yeah, we talked with Ken Damro.
Ken is a very stand-up fine gentleman. I really love the conversation. I love talking about, he has 2.5 acres that he does vegan culture on. Living in Wisconsin, being vegan, being a former hunter. Pretty amazing guy. I love this conversation. Just a swell dude. So stick around for that. Hey Jordan, what news and events do we have going on this week?
Well, if you find yourself in Durango, Colorado, on November 12th and 13th, there is the North American Conference for Critical Animal Studies conference. So check that out. Also, Standing Rock still has a lot of solidarity actions going on, so help out any way that you can. Either that by going down there and helping out in person, or finding a local action that you can do to help out. This week's listener shout out comes from Nora Belrose. Nora wanted to say, "You guys are awesome. As a vegan anarchist myself, it's great to have a podcast to listen with so many cool guests. If I'm ever in Salt Lake, I'd love to meet up with you guys and say hi." Well, thanks, Nora.
And for sure, if you're in Salt Lake, hit us up. We'll definitely say hi. I'll ask if you want a high five. High five.
I'll ask if you want a low five. Low five.
And then we'll do it at the same time. High and low.
In a weird circle thing that looks like some ritual. It'll be fun.
It will be way fun. That goes for anyone. If anyone's in Salt Lake, hook us up.
Yeah, hook us up. If you're interested in doing a listener shout out, just go to whichsidepodcast.com, click on the donate tab, and find out all the information about it.
For the slingshot this week, November 9th, 2005. That's when 1,000 NYU grad students went on strike over the university's refusal to let them unionize.
Wow.
It lasted several weeks. I think 4 weeks, if I remember correctly. Something like 4 or 5 weeks. If you like these little tidbits of history, I pulled them out of the Slingshot Personal Organizer. You can get one at a local info shop or an online info shop like AK Press. Remember, they don't pay us for this. We just like what they do. I sincerely hope you enjoy this episode.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side? Which side are you on? 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 Which side are you on?
So how's your day going today?
Oh, having a great day. Really good day. We're having a good stretch of weather here.
Where are you located at?
In southwest Wisconsin.
Southwest Wisconsin.
And it's...
That does not sound like a huge vegan community there. What's the vegan community like?
There are a few of us. Around, smattered around here and there. No doubt about it. Yeah, it's amazing. Everywhere you go around here, you find vegans. There's more and more vegan food available, and so on and so forth. But I wouldn't say it's anything like, Portland or wherever, more and more all the time, though, and I think it's important to have a few of us out here.
I'm always surprised about the vegan communities outside of the vegan hot zones, and because I find them almost to be more thriving and more community engaged. Maybe because they're a little bit smaller, a little more tight knit than some of the other communities, the larger communities, right?
I'm not sure, but I would like to think so. Let's put it that way. I don't know that. I don't know that in reality that's been my experience. I wish we were more networked and more tight and had more stuff going on, and we're currently working on that. But you have fewer people to do the work this way too, and so I don't know. I think there's better things, better times are coming, and we're only going to get stronger and more people over time. The internet helps, unite people.
So what kind of stuff are you working on in your local community? Because you said you're working on getting more things happening there. Like, what does that entail?
We're happy here just to pull off some potlucks, to tell you the honest truth. It seems like so we do that. We get together and do the potlucks, and we've done some documentaries and some presentations, and occasionally some of us will get out and do some presentations or tabling here and there, but we're just, I think right now we're kind of in a reorganization phase here where we're just, in fact, this Monday night we're going to have a meeting, and we're going to kind of get together and determine where we want to go and what we want to do. There's been a few people, key people who have moved out recently, and so, it's just, I guess every organization goes through that.
That's actually, from my perspective, that's a really fun time to be involved, right? To be a part of that reorganization and rebuilding that the goals and setting things forward and kind of getting that path laid out. That's the fun part for me.
Yeah, I think so. At that point, there's a lot of optimism. People aren't burnt out yet. And I tend to agree with you, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing what shakes out of our meeting.
You said organizing like a good potluck, and potluck to me, there's almost an art to organizing a good potluck, especially continually, right? To get that continual engagement. I've never been able to do that. So if you have any secrets of getting a good potluck going, let me know. Yeah,
right. And there's been a lot of discussion in our group whether, some people say, we should have it at the same place at the same time on the same night, week after week, month after month, so that people, kind of know automatically whether to go or not. And then there's other people who say, no, we should have it, we should move around and do different things so that we get a variety of people involved. And so I don't know. I don't know which. I guess we've been doing our share of jumping around, and I don't know which. Philosophy really works better, or if one does, I'm not sure. But,
so, what is your origin? Like, what really brought you into animal rights? What's your story of becoming, vegan?
Wow. Well, I don't know if you know, but. I was brought up as a very avid hunter and fisherman. Mm-hmm. And so I was kind of spoon-fed that all throughout my childhood. And when your father does it, and your grandfather does it, and your brother-in-laws do it, and your brother and all your friends do it, you don't question the morality behind it. It was just, for me, it was a venue to network with other guys and to be out in the woods and out on the water. And I loved it. I loved every bit of it. And, of course, there was the wounding of the animals, which, we tried to prevent. And I, even at a young age, I knew that was not a good thing. And I remember feeling sorry for the animals that we killed. But, it's just, again, when you're spoon-fed that from early on, it's just something you kind of do, and or at least for me it was. And then as I got older, into my later teens, I really started questioning the whole thing a little bit more. And but at that age, I really thought you needed to have animal protein in your diet to be healthy. I didn't even hear of the word vegan until I was in my 30s. I mean, I was truly ignorant. And so at that point in my life, I think my hunting and fishing, though I still enjoyed being out there immensely, it kind of went from recreational more to an environmental. I mean, I was kind of a paleo before paleo was popular. I was doing it to kind of reduce my impact on buying things at the grocery store and shipping meat across the country and all of that. And I just thought, if I go out and shoot a deer and eat out of my freezer, that's got to be better than buying some cow from Brazil. So even in my teens, I could see that a lot of things we were doing were unsustainable. And when I was 18, I moved to Wisconsin's Great Northwoods, where there was tons of public land and tons of lakes and rivers. And I thought, I'm just going to live my little paleo life up here and live with a small impact. And then a number of things happened unknowingly to me, or unknowingly. Little by little, things happened I started questioning the whole thing. And eventually learned that you didn't need to have animal protein in your diet. And then that's when I finally quit. But gosh, by then I was in my early to mid 30s.
How did you actually learn that? Like, what was that process of learning it? Was it, just acquaintances, friends? Was there like a book or a documentary?
Yeah, no, I'd made a friend this guy, I'd known him for a couple of months, and I'm not sure at the time if I knew he was vegan or not. And that at that time I'd really scaled down my hunting and fishing. I really, at that time, enough things had happened in my life where I really thought, I was really questioning it profoundly. And I was basically just going out enough to get some meat now and then. And I'd made this friend, and I was talking to him on the phone, and I knew that he was one time a hunter and fisherman as well, but he didn't hunt and fish anymore. And I guess that's why we became friends. And I was talking to him on the phone, and I said, Mike, I wish we didn't have to have this animal protein in our diet, because the whole thing is really problematic to me. It's all pretty messy in my mind and in my heart, and I really don't like any of it. And he just started laughing, and he laughed. And he said, "You don't need animal protein in your diet." And I said, "Yeah, I think you do, Mike." And he said, "No, you don't." And I think you do. And I remember just getting on the internet then. I just bought my first computer, and he said, "Hey, go to this website, go to that website, do some reading," which I did. And man, I couldn't stop reading, and I just remember feeling so buffooned, so misled. I thought, wow, my whole life I thought I was under this impression that I thought we needed to have meat, and we don't. And I just I guess I just felt lied to, like I was part of this big lie. And of course that was the day I went vegan.
So you said you loved going hunting and fishing, and I grew up with a family that not so much hunting, but huge outdoors, huge into fishing. So I mean, I understand that, but for you, what was that love for? Was it the ritual of going through this tradition? Was it just being out there in nature? What created that love for you?
Wow, good question. I think there are many layers actually of why I was out there and why a lot of other people are out there as well. Part of it was, when you grow up in a family like that, you don't know how else to be out there. So it's sort of an excuse or a way to get your butt out there and to be out in the woods and out on the water. And, now I go out birding. I go out with my binoculars. And so I found other ways to go out and enjoy the countryside. But so that was a big part of it. And then, seeing the animals, pursuing the animals, you develop and I know this is going to sound funny, but you develop a love for your quarry. You start to respect them more and more because, these animals and the fish as well, they're so perfect in their environment. Their camouflage is good. They're cunning. Their senses are good. They're so swift and on and on and on. And you just develop this huge respect for them. And, so that was part of it. And then we had hunting dogs and it was always so much fun to train a dog and to watch it, to watch it work and have all that going on too. And but I think there were deeper layers than I really knew at the time. I think there are deeper things that hunters and fishermen really know about. I mean, I think there's things they're just really not in touch with themselves with. And I remember the first inkling of this came when I remember back when I was still doing a lot of hunting. I was at work and I was telling this coworker I'd had some hunting outing and I was telling him all about it and what we'd killed and how it all went and everything. And this coworker woman, was overhearing the conversation and she came up and she said, "How can you kill these innocent animals? Why do you hate them?" And just carrying on. And I said, "Wait, I don't hate these animals. I love them." And she looked at me with this really puzzled look and as though to say, "Does your wife know you kill out of love?" And, and at the time it made perfect sense to me. But in subsequent days, I started thinking about it and I thought, boy, this is kind of bizarre. You're killing the animals you love. And, at that time, I don't know how old you guys are, but I don't know if you remember this, but back in the 80s, throughout the 80s, there was a serial killer on the loose in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, by the name of Jeffrey Dahmer. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you know who he is?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. And anyhow, he was caught I think it was 1991, and they questioned him. And by the way, I don't know if you remember, he not only killed 17 people, but he would make things out of them. He would eat their meat and make lampshades out of their skin and all this bizarre stuff. And so anyhow, when they caught him in 1991, of course, the first question they asked him is, "Why, Jeffrey? Why did you kill these people?" And he said, "I killed them because I love them." And they said, "What do you mean?" And he says, "Well, I love them, and I knew if I didn't kill them, they'd get away. They'd get away, and I'd never see them again." And so I think that's a lot of what these are like deeper layers of why we're out there. So there's this sort of what I call possessive or immature love going on with the critters that we pursue. That we have to possess them and control them and even kill them if need be, just to have them in our hand. And if you look at like the state hunting and fishing regulations, they use the word possession over and over and over in the book. And so it's like a really big thing to have this animal that can fly away or run away or swim away way faster than we could ever catch them, and to have this animal in your hand or in your game pouch or in your creel basket. It's a powerful thing, and it's based on this possessive love. And incidentally, I always think it's funny when I'm talking to hunters nowadays, somebody will say to me, "Oh yeah, I hunt or whatever, but we use everything. We use the skin and the hide, and I always tell them, well, that's what Jeffrey Dahmer did too, didn't win him any points, But
I'm going to steal that one because that's a good one.
I think. Yeah, that kind of gets them. There's not much you can respond to about that, and so at that point in my life, that was the first I kind of realized I was a serial killer, and then after he was caught and he got this sentence of life in prison, I thought, wow, he's got life in prison and I'm scot-free, still doing this, and it's legal, and it was pretty profound. I mean, that was like the first big chip out of the rock of resistance, for me. That's a long answer.
No, it's fantastic. There's a bunch of things in there I want to come back to. Like one of them is that you mentioned, you called it like an immature love, right? This passive love. And it's one of the things that I've never been able to really understand, from, people that are hunters, or especially avid hunters who claim that they're conservationists at the same time that they love these animals so much. But the way that you just framed it finally started to click for me, that it was more of like that immature, like having to have that possessiveness kind of love. But yeah, I've never just that part of hunting that like avid hunters use. It's never sunk with me.
Well, I think, and I don't claim to have this mastered. I think it's a work in progress for me and for everybody, and we're all at different places. And, we all have traces of this, or probably most of us do, in our everyday relationships with our spouses and our friends. And, we try to control people and possess them in different ways. And, we hear this all the time when, there are these triple homicide, suicide things that we read about in the newspaper, we hear on the news, where John comes home from work and sees his wife in bed with another guy, and he just gets out his gun and shoots him. He just can't stand the fact that he can't control his wife, and that she's, not following his whatever. And so anyhow, I think it's widespread. I think it just, when it comes to hunting and fishing, it's just something, at least for me, that it sort of surfaces, and I can see it more clearly that way.
You said that you started questioning and having a little bit of problems with the entire engagement when you were a teenager, and then subsequently later on through the conversation with your friend. What about it was really having that conflict with you? That what really caused that internal conflict?
Well, again, I think it was many things. It was like this woman asking me, why do you kill these innocent animals? Why do you hate them? So that was like one thing. It got me thinking. So that would be like one thing, and I would spend. I would still hunt. I would still go hunting, but then it's like, wow, what am I doing? And then like maybe a year or 6 months later, something else would happen, and it would kind of. So it was just kind of these mounting things that would happen, and I think they'll happen to you if you allow them to. If you're not so closed-minded that you won't let anything into your mind or in your heart, So I think I was slowly opening up to like, am I doing the right? I was always questioning, am I doing the right thing here? Because taking an animal's life is a really big thing, and I guess maybe not everybody thinks that when they're a hunter and fisherman, but I always did. I always thought, man, this is a really big thing, but I've got to have my meat, So I always justified it that way. And I guess that fact that I was ignorant, and I have to admit, I enjoyed being out there, but my ignorance kept me going, even though I was getting more and more pieces to the puzzle all the time.
One of the things that I've always kind of loved about animal rights is that when people first like open up to the idea, they kind of open themselves up to other realms that they didn't think about before, in different ways, whether that is relationships with other races or other minorities or with women.
Oh, yeah.
So how did that portray into your own life?
Well, absolutely. That's a really good question. And again, I think it really helped with my personal spousal relationships and just all my relationships. I think I had to really examine, am I possessive with my wife? And kind of funny that I'm divorced now, but at the time I was still married, and I just had to really check in with her and make sure that I wasn't being controlling or possessive, or that she felt free to do what she wanted to do. And I guess, if you have kids, it's the same thing. You can just like completely over control your kids. And so for me, that was a big, that whole thing, that whole possessive love thing just, went into my personal life and into all my relationships with the people I knew.
I always thought the point of having a kid was so you could bend them to your will. Is that not the case?
I don't know. I think you can maybe spin a little influence on them if you're lucky, but I think it depends on the kid too. I think some kids want to be molded into whatever, but I don't know.
Not mine, man. She's an independent little fiery thing. I love it.
I wonder where you got that from.
So, how going through these changes, especially a lot of people, they either make these changes like either midlife or very young, and it seems like you were on the little older of the side of the spectrum. How did people in your life actually react to this change?
Wow, good question. I think and this is probably why a lot of guys never actually do quit, and because there's just an enormous amount of peer pressure, and both in my family and with my friends. And I remember getting, razzed or teased about it at first. Then eventually people, accept it and they don't say anything anymore. But, for 20 or 30 years, you're meeting the boys at the deer hunting shack for deer hunting, and all of a sudden one year you're going to call them up and say, I don't think I'm going to go this year. I turned vegan. So yeah, the peer pressure is huge. A lot of people have, you obviously have a network of friends, and you get together and you barbecue and you go out to eat, and all of that gets turned upside down. And so you have to have thick enough skin. You have to have enough will and enough. I knew when I went vegan, I knew by then I wanted to do it so badly. There was nobody that was going to persuade me. There was no amount of teasing or whatever that was ever going to make me go back to my previous lifestyle. I knew that at that point. But I do hear, since then I've talked to a lot of guys, and they're just like, boy, I wouldn't have any friends left, So
how did you cope with that? Like dealing with those relationships that you did have?
Well, I lost a lot of friends, but I made so many new ones, and looking back on it, it was totally worth it.
Was that like did you have any instances of where people were just like, oh, I can't be around you anymore? Or was it just like that slow fade away? Like, well, our interests are just completely different now.
Yeah, I think it was more the latter. I think, you just pretty soon you just don't do anything with them anymore, because you're used to, again, the hunting outings and the fishing outings, and pretty soon they don't include you anymore, or even if you have friends that go out to eat steak or whatever, pretty soon they're not going to call you anymore. Mm-hmm. And, so for me, it was just, sort of a gradual, I guess we're not going to call him anymore. We kind of know what the answer is going to be, kind of thing. So, but I did, in truth, there were a few that, and they weren't necessarily hunting and fishing buddies, but they were, friends in my life that, were totally cool with it and just said, yeah, we understand, and we're not going vegan, but yeah, it's okay if you do, kind of thing. So I'm sure you've heard that. So.
Oh yeah. So with the animal rights community in general, what is an aspect that you just wish would change, like something you don't really like that's happening that you kind of would wish would just stop?
Well, I think there's a bit of information that I never hear conveyed that I think we need to start conveying. Throughout my life, I've gotten really interested in birding and wild birds, and I started doing bird surveys for the U.S. Forest Service many years ago, and started seeing what the impacts of animal agriculture were doing on wild bird populations, on grassland birds and woodland birds. And there are many impacts, and they're really quite profound. It's probably animal agriculture is probably the biggest detriment to wild birds and wildlife in general. And, I just hear these same drums beating over and over and over again. These animals have awareness, we shouldn't, and that's all true and it's all good. And it's great that we're out there doing that. But, we need something to sort of, and I don't want to use the word combat or whatever, but we need something to answer to the grass-fed beef issue and the free-range chicken issue, because where I live, that's a really big industry, and as long as these animals have a good life, why not? It's all good, And I'm like, well, you still got to cut hay for these cows, and when you cut hay, you're killing snakes and rabbits and grassland birds and fawns and the list goes on. And I know when my neighbors cut hay here, the eagles and the coyotes come in, and it's like ringing the dinner bell. There's so many dead animals out there that, they come from miles around. So, and then, the growing of the corn and, invasive birds such as English house sparrows and European starlings are attracted to animal agriculture. And of course, then that's a detriment to the native birds. And so, I just never hear that. I guess it's very rare to hear anybody really talk about that aspect. And I think it's a really huge aspect that we need to maybe incorporate into what we're already doing.
Do you think that I feel this way. I think that we kind of gloss over the idea of quote unquote happy meat, right? Where we focus so much on the intensified animal agriculture and the factory farms that we kind of, we don't agree with grass-fed or free range just because it's inherently, still murder, right? But we don't really focus on it at all. I shouldn't say at all, but as much. Yeah. I think traditionally we haven't, but I see more and more of it, though. I think the remaking of Peaceable Kingdom, they did. I think that's why they made the second edition. I don't know if you saw that, but the first one was pretty much focused on the CAFOs and the factory farms, and then the second one they came out with did have an awful lot more on the small family farm, kind of thing. So, but you're right. Yeah, absolutely. We need to move with what's going on. You can't be rigid, for sure. I've always just kind of in the back of my mind hoped that it was just a fad that would go away. Right. Because it's like, but it feels like it's catching ground because it gives people a moral out. Like they think, well, it's humane, so it's okay. So they don't have to think about the actual suffering or the actual conditions. Right. And the hay cutting and the corn growing and
yeah.
I mean, all the
Right. No, absolutely. And again, where I live, we have or at least we did a couple of years ago, we had the largest concentration of organic farms of anywhere in the country. And these were small family farms. Most of them are dairy and beef and egg and, some vegetable farms. But, there's just a big, huge industry behind it all. And I think the whole happy meat, pasture raised, I think it was a huge setback to the vegan movement. And I think especially when you see, the Humane Society and, some of these bigger organizations sort of endorsing that, I think it was just a huge hit. I know where they're coming from. I understand where they're coming from. I mean, if your dog was part of the CAFO, if your dog was in a CAFO or whatever, I'd rather have it see, I'd like to see it have a bigger cage or treated well, I'd like to see that too. But for these vegan organizations to actually be endorsing happy meat or, what they call humane meat is, it's a real setback. And again, that's why these things like the environmental impacts hold true whether it's organic and free range or not. They still, unless you live in the tropics, you still have to cut hay for the wintertime. When the truck comes to the farm and it's got a picture of that happy cow out on the green pasture, that chicken on that green lawn there. Nobody thinks, what happens in the wintertime with these animals? I mean, I have neighbors who have cows, they're free range in the summer, but in the winter, they're all confined to a feedlot and they're sitting in 2 feet of cow shit, And 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 still the organic truck comes every day, and everybody's behind this because they see this picture on the side of the truck.
I honestly just think it's one of those issues where people feel like they're actually doing something without having to sacrifice anything. Similar
Bingo.
to just throwing money to things or whatever. It's just one of those easy outs.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I said, as far as I'm concerned, it was probably one of the biggest setbacks to the vegan movement.
It's one of the things that I've always wished would be easier about being vegan, because it's a conscious choice every day, all day long, to not have this impact, right? Like if you let it be passive, you would just fuck up all the time.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I say that to people. I say, man, I come home from work. It's like, man, I had like 5 moral dilemmas today, and people look at me like, what, man, you're just attracting that into your life, dude. And I'm like, no, if you're aware, man, it's like, it happens to you all the time. I agree. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's just, you have to be like actively engaged in it all the time. I mean, I've been vegan now over 20 years, and it's easier. It's definitely easier now. But you still have to make that decision all the time, and it has to be reinforced almost on a daily basis.
I know. And I guess I think there's probably people who know about veganism and they might even go vegan, but they look down that tunnel of what's, of in the future, and they see these things, they see these barriers, and they're like, wow, I'm just not ready for that. Life is hard enough. I can barely get my kids off to school and, get to work and blah, blah, blah. So, what you're saying is true. And, I wish it were different, but I guess that's part of what a meaningful life is all about. I mean,
true.
Nobody said it was going to be easy.
No, what I find interesting is when you were talking about like the downstream effects of like grass-fed beef and everything, which how their feed is actually harvested and things like that. One of the things that I always think about with that as well is the privilege aspect of being able to be that kind of consumer, right? That not everyone can feasibly eat that way because there's not enough land. Like it just doesn't exist to be able to, even if we wanted to. So there's just so many problems with every step of this type of animal agriculture. Yeah,
you can't. It's not. Yeah, you can't use it as an answer to all our land or animal agriculture problems. Although I did see the documentary. I think it's called. Oh, I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's one word. I think it's called Meat or America's Meat. Have you seen that? It's a documentary. Yeah, it's a organic, grass-fed, free-range movie, and they showed it locally here. And throughout the movie, I'm thinking just what you just said. I said, this is not an answer for everybody. Not everybody can eat this. And then near the end of the movie, they actually showed a map of the U.S. and they showed they said, if we cut all our forests and if we, blah, 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 we could actually feed the world with this. So, I mean, like their answer to it was to cut all the forests. And, they claim we actually would have enough land. But, and I took issue to that after the movie, of course. But, you're right. I mean, it's kind of a, like you say, privilege. It's for a privileged group of people. And, yeah,
I'm actually interested to see that documentary now. I'm gonna try to look it up, because I was just gonna ask you, being in an area where that agriculture is actually happening, like where we're at, we don't really have that type of animal agriculture. We do have a little bit, but not as intensified. So what is the general feeling of people? Do they feel like this is a good way of doing agriculture, or is this just changing with the times to feed your family kind of a thing?
What, animal agriculture in general, or the free range kind of thing?
Specifically going like to the happy meat, the free range, the grass fed.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you have to admit, I guess if it's organic, they're not, using GMO or spraying the crops. So, so it's a incremental it's a small bit better. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, the people that live around here are totally behind it. It's I think probably our biggest industry here is the organic, free range, grass fed animal agriculture, and yeah, for them it's a way to be easier on their land and easier on their conscience and still make some money.
So how does an activist go about approaching people like that, like where they feel good about it on their conscious level and they're sustaining their livelihood?
Why don't you get back to me when you know the answer to that? Yeah, that's the $1 million question, man. I've been, I'm kind of a introvert pacifist kind of guy, so I'm not out there, rattling everybody's cage. And after all, these organic free range people are my neighbors, and I depend on these people for all kinds of things too. So it's really, you have to play your strategy. You can't go out there and just totally piss them all off. And, you can't go out there and burn their cornfield or whatever, burn their tractor, it's just,
I mean, you could.
So I guess, I guess I'm trying to do it by, one thing, just living an example. I have a little 2.5 acre, veganic permaculture, and my neighbors see the incredible produce I get off of this land by not having any animal manure or fertilizers in that way. And so I think I've made somewhat of an impression on them. And I've gone out and done some talks. They haven't all been real well received, but I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I think you just need to keep picking away at it. And I don't know.
So 2.5 acres is little to you. I just moved into a new property, and I'm going to have 2 4x8 beds. So that's going to be my garden. That's little.
But you'll be completely amazed what you get out of that.
Oh, I have no doubt about that. That's for sure.
And I thought my 1/2 acre was huge.
It's less to take care of. Sometimes I'm just driving myself crazy here trying to keep up with 2.5 acres.
So since you do 2.5 acres of vegan culture, I'm going to have ask you a bunch of questions probably in the future, because I don't even know what I have coming up against me.
Well, and it's going to be way different for you out there, compared to me here, where we get a ton more rain and weeds and whatnot here, but absolutely, again, I think you'll be amazed at what how much produce you can get out of a small area, and I think that's the whole. I mean, that's the whole. For me, that's the whole thing of the whole environmental aspect of the vegan movement is how we could all live off of just such a small amount of land. And living here in big animal agriculture country, I mean, I drive down the road and I look out over literally thousands of acres of corn and soybean, and I think, how many animals can live in there? I mean, possibly a few, earthworms or something. And there's no birds nesting in there. There's very few animals in there. And I just think, if everyone was vegan, we could live on a 20th of the land, or even if it was half the land, if half of this land could go back to native prairie and native woodland. I just think of the amount of wildlife we could restore, and the wild space, the green space that we could restore for ourselves would just be incredible. And so I mean, I realize it's more complicated than just telling people to go vegan, and the farmers get a huge reduction in their taxes by having agriculture on their land, and after all, they're just making a living. They're just paying their bills, and they're doing it the only way they know how. So, but yeah, you can just get a lot of produce off of a small area. If you plant intensively and you know what you're doing.
What are your go-to plants to grow?
Oh man, I pretty much do it all here. I have lots of fruits. I have an enormous raspberry patch, and I have a big blackberry patch, and I have a fruit orchard, and then I've just got all the usual garden plants, the root crops, and I have a root cellar that's full, and I have freezers that are full, and I try to grow enough dry beans or shell beans to last the year. And I guess if I didn't have to go off and work for a living, I could just do this full time. I could grow even more of my own food here, but I end up giving a lot of my food away because I just can't eat it all, and I don't have nearly the whole 2.5 acres in cultivation at all. I mean, it's what I have is a couple of small hay fields, probably a half acre, and I scythe the hay by hand and dry it, and then I use the hay on my gardens as a mulch and a fertilizer, and it also keeps them damp so you don't need to water and stuff like that. And then if there's any food waste or human waste or whatever, that goes back out on the hay field to replenish the hay field. So theoretically, it's like a closed loop permaculture, but you're using your own waste instead of animals' waste to fertilize. And so theoretically, it works pretty darn well here. And again, I guess if I didn't have to go off and work like everybody else, and if I could focus a little more on this, I could get even more out of it. But
do you have any problems with slugs inside of the hay, using the hay that way?
I have in the past, not at this location, but I have in the past, and it seems to be kind of a seasonal thing. They kind of come on for a week or two and chew everything up, and then you get frustrated and you replant, and then the next time it's all good. So, and it seems like when I have them bad, everybody, even the people who rototill and have bare soil, have them bad.
I tried hay once to actually grow potatoes in, because I was told that potatoes, the tubers will get a lot bigger without having the constraints of the soil to press against. But the one time I tried it was just constant problems with slugs. Well, I'm sure there's ways of killing slugs, but then you're killing slugs. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah. And I guess, every year it seems like there's something different that's after my garden. And I guess I just try and plant way more than I need. And, the critters are going to get some of it, and some of it they're not. And you just, at the end of the year, I go through stages of real frustration, like, oh, what am I going to do with this gopher? He's just like pushing me to the limit, and then, all of a sudden by September, October, I'm like, oh, I've got so much produce, I don't know what to do with it, so in the end, I do pretty well, and just kind of I think you just kind of got to look at the slugs and the critters as, maybe there's certain things that just don't do well here, and I have to focus on the things that do well, and maybe where you were, you just can't grow potatoes, but maybe something else would grow really well.
I've been loving banana squash lately, just because they get so big and they feed so much. Like, one banana squash will make you like 15 mils.
I know. I know squash, and it's so easy to grow. I always thought, man, we could feed the world with squash. We really could.
It's so great.
I mean, that's what the native crop here was before the white man came out here in Utah. Yeah,
squash, beans, and corn, right?
Yeah. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, and those are all, easy and plentiful crops to grow, and really good nutrition. You get the protein from the beans, and it's all possible. Just need to go out and do it.
So you were talking earlier about how your neighbors, you kind of have to live with them, and it's your actual neighbors doing this type of agriculture. Do they ever view you as like the enemy, kind of like, you are espousing to try to take away my livelihood?
Oh, we've been through that. Yeah, we go through bouts of that. Yeah. And then you have to really work hard to mend up those relationships. And, it's a fine line. It's really you got to be a psychologist practically. There's times I come back home and I'm like, wow, that went pretty well. And then there's other times I come home and I'm like, man, did I blow that? They were not happy with me. So, Yeah, and so I try to do what I can, to stay on good terms. But there's, like you were saying before, the moral dilemmas, the daily moral dilemmas. I mean, when they come over and say, "Hey, we're pouring concrete for our new corn crib. Can you give us a hand?" And I'm like, "Well, let's see. Am I really going to help them with their animal agriculture?" Then I'll sit here. I'm like, "Gee, I don't know. Is that the right thing to do? I want to help my neighbors, but." It's like, would you help the Jews build help the Germans build a concentration camp for the Jews? Probably not. So then I'm like, well, sorry, can't help you with that, but I'll be happy to help you with some other project down the road, and they probably, look at me like, man, this guy's weird. We can't figure him out. But, yeah, there's stuff like that goes on all the time living in the country here. It's really hard. I have a new neighbor that came over not too long ago and wanted to help setting up a free-range chicken coop. And I told him, I said, I really disapprove with using animals as a commodity, And then there was something else he had associated with that I did end up helping him with. But yeah, it's hard to. Sometimes you got to really think on your feet. You can't wait. I'll call you in 2 hours. After I think this over. It's like, because man, they come over, they're ready to do it. And yeah. So I guess that's what makes life interesting.
That would be really hard for me because I'm always the first to try to help my neighbors in anything they're doing, and I've just never had to help in that capacity before, right?
Yeah.
So with the neighbor that you told that you don't agree with the commodification of animals, like that's a loaded statement, right? Like,
yeah. That's the thing with veganism. You got to get as much information. I mean, everything these days is sound bites. You got to try to get the whole thing across in a sentence, and it's just impossible. But at least give them something to think about. And
did that conversation end well? Like, was there further questions like the commodification, like?
Well, he said, I'm an ethics major, he said. And so I guess that made it all good for him. I don't know. But
ask him if he's ever read Peter Singer, right?
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. There's going to be a lot more dialogue, I'm sure.
Another ethics guy, so... That dialogue just seems like it'd be very, very challenging. I mean, we have a hard enough time just talking about how, just eating habits or everything else, but what is the general livelihood and then trying to be that good neighbor at the same time and having to live with each other and build community.
Bingo. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that I have a hard time just dealing with the irrigation because it's owned by the dairy farm in my neighborhood. So I have to go to a dairy farm in order to pay my irrigation. Right. Yeah. So there's just no end to it, is there? I mean,
no.
as long as you're alive and you're aware in any way. I mean, the old statement, ignorance is bliss, is really true, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, but I would never want to go back to not knowing. How's that?
Right. Me too. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's difficult sometimes. It's dynamic, but you can't, once you progress, you can't really go back. I don't know. I can't anyway.
So what advice would you give to somebody who is just making the transition right now into either a vegan lifestyle or the becoming an animal rights activist?
Oh my gosh. What advice? I mean, every situation is different, right? So it would depend, but I guess the mistake that I think a lot of people make is, and me too, I guess when you first go vegan and like the whole thing starts making sense to you, right? The whole thing, we've been duped all our life, everybody's into this concentration, supporting concentration camps with our money on. And it's like, holy crap, if the rest of the world knew the truth, of course they would change. I've got to tell them. It's up to me now. And so you go out there and you just you kill yourself, trying to do everything. You're out there, spilling your guts out on the sidewalk to people, you know, it's like every day, and you're you're screaming at your family and your friends. It's like, no, you don't understand. Don't you get it? You know, it's like a concentration camp, you know, and they're just like looking at, and eventually then you spin out of control and you burn out and you end up in this depressed mode for a while. It's like, wow, I really thought if people knew the truth, they'd change. And then you realize that now they know the truth and they're still not changing. And so I think there's this expectation. And so I guess that would be my advice is that, you know, don't make expectations. It happens slowly for a lot of people. I would say don't give up, you know, stay at it. But, you know, try not to be obnoxious and try to be very tactful and hang in there.
Yeah, it took my mom 10, 15 years before she finally went vegetarian, but she did, so.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, just rub it in. I'm over 20 and my mom still is just like, nah.
Good for you. I know it's so wonderful when you have success, when you can. Yeah.
Well, I can't believe that we're almost already at an hour. What is some way that people can find out more information about what you do and some of your projects?
Well, I do for my business. I do have a website, and I do some veganic permaculture stuff on there. And that website is Ken's Caretaking, which is one word, kenscaretaking.weebly.com.
I am definitely going to reach out to you, by the way.
What's that?
I said I am definitely going to reach out to you, by the way.
Oh, cool. And also, back in 2006, I self-published a book called by the title of A North Woodsman's Guide to Everyday Compassion, and it talks about my transition from a hunter to a vegan. And I don't know that book's still it's still being published, but I think there's enough of them out there. You can probably find them on Amazon. So it's North Woodsman's Guide to Everyday Compassion by Ken Damro.
Oh, perfect. We'll put a link to that in the show notes.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much for taking your time of your afternoon for us today. And
my pleasure.
I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
I think I will, and I wish the same to you.
This week you heard
Open by Calm Truise.
Right now you're listening to
Kong by Bonobo. iTunes. We say this every week, and I'm going to continue to say this every week until we get to 400 reviews. That's quite a ways away. That's why
Let's do a more reasonable goal. What if we get to 100 reviews that we offer 50% off the website store?
I mean, that's pretty fucking generous, right? I mean, we're pretty close to 100 reviews now.
Yeah.
Let's do it. I say let's do it. We get 100 reviews in iTunes. We'll do a 50% off sale for a week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fucking awesome.
It'd be sweet. So if you've already given us a review and you want that 50% off sale, make some fake accounts. Just kidding. But
or tell your friends.
Or tell your friends, yeah.
Hashtag ghost review.
But yeah, let's get to 100 reviews. Give you 50% off.
And while you're telling your friends, you should be our friends on social media. All you have to do is go to whichsidepodcast.com, click on that little social tab, and it'll show you all of the social media accounts that we have.
Except
we have a
LO.
plethora.
It doesn't tell you about LO.
Yeah, we don't really use it, though.
I mean, we have it.
To be honest, I pretty much only use Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
But no Friendster on there?
No Friendster, no MySpace.
Ugh.
I mean, I'm barely figuring out how to use Snapchat. I just look at the filters because they're funny. But we don't have one for Which Side. So...
Sorry.
We promised somebody that we'd get one. We probably should.
We probably should.
Be our friends. whichsidepodcast.com/social.
Social. So social of you.
Yeah.
I'm going to socially say fuck shit damn.
Fuck shit it damn it.
Is that the social way of saying it?
Fuck it.
Fuck it.
Fuck it. Shit it damn it.
Which Side Podcast is hosted and produced by Jordan Halliday and Jeremy Parkin of the Which Side Media Collective, with web design by Jordan Halliday and sound design by Jeremy Parkin. Booking by Mari Halliday. Theme music by Commandantes. Go to whichsidecollective.org to check out the other shows in the collective. As always, fuck shit damn.